Yes. So my bookstore, the Lynx, which I own with my husband, opened in April. We have been looking for a space to open a bookstore, not entirely seriously, for about 10 years. My husband's from a bookstore family. For 4 generations, they had a bookstore. And Gainesville didn't have a very good independent bookstore. And as you know, independent bookstores are the beating heart of any community, right? They're sort of where literary life comes from. So there was a big need and a gap. But it wasn't until my family and I were in Germany at the American Academy in Berlin for 6 months when this huge swelling of book bans started happening in the state of Florida. And German people kept pulling us aside and being like, stop it now. If you don't stop it, we will tell you what happens, because book bans are the point of the spear of authoritarianism, and everything gets worse from there. So when we came back to the United States, we finally got very serious. We found our space. And what we want to do is sort of build a space in the Republicans' playground, which is small business, right? Because a small business is sort of exempt in conservative thought from I guess, regulations in some ways. And so we want to be a space of absolute tolerance, right? We want to be a space of love. We want to be the place that upholds and disseminates these books that are being challenged and banned, a lot of them because they're LGBTQI+, a lot of them because they talk about Black history, Indigenous history, the history of people who are not white. A lot of these books talk about sex in a frank way. And a lot of them are just threatening to the status quo, which is, white male supremacist, particularly in Florida. And so we want to be a space that is loving and open to everyone. We want the people who are fleeing Florida, especially transgender, LGBTQI plus people, because they're not safe in the state, to feel as though there is someone there fighting for them. And we want to tell the rest of the world that Florida is not this one story of oppression. We are also a place where people are fighting really hard against the oppression. And we have a nonprofit wing as well. And we've been sort of just giving out challenged and banned books to so many people, so many hundreds, if not thousands at this point, of challenged and banned books. So it's been incredibly fun. It's so much work. I'm so tired right now. I haven't had a break in a year at this point. But, someday the bookstore will run itself and I can sleep. I think, the bookstore is a political space for sure, especially in places where the government is really cracking down on free speech and free expression. You think about Shakespeare and Company and Sylvia Beach. She was the first person to put out Ulysses, and she's the one who fought for Ulysses. In Texas, the people leading the charge against book banning are bookstore owners. So I do think bookstores have the potential to be radical spaces. They're not dependent upon governmental money. And so they're free from the bonds of having to do what the government wants them to do, or else the money is withdrawn. So they're independent private spaces. And I have to tell you, without a bookstore, I think most, a small independent bookstore in particular, most writers probably would not be writers. My friend Garth Greenwell, who's this amazing gay writer, grew up in the South in a culture that was very much, like hypermasculine and football related. And he didn't even know that he was gay until he went to an independent bookstore and started reading the books that were available. So it's a way to offer alternate visions of the world and alternate windows into other people's lives that perhaps the places that are upheld by the government cannot allow people to have. I think they're places of gathering, they're places of bringing together disparate communities, and booksellers are some of the quiet radicals of the world, like librarians and public school teachers. So I moved to Florida 18 years ago at this point, which seems like such a long time. And I resisted it mightily. Not only did I resist the heat, which I absolutely hate, I resisted the cockroaches, the termites, the hurricanes, the alligators, everything that wants to kill you, right? I also, Florida is the sort of the butt of every joke in the United States. It is a ridiculous place in everybody's point of view, in mine as well. And so I resisted loving the state. I do think it's very good for a writer to feel as if they're not living at the center, right? They're living way outside of the center. And Florida makes me feel like I'm living very far outside of the center. And so it's a gift. It's a gift of being a stranger and seeing the world as strange. Because, there are great books that come out of New York City and Brooklyn, but there are a lot of books that come out of New York City and Brooklyn, and so I think it's really fun and good to have something different. I eventually learned to love Florida, despite the things that I hate about it, despite the politicians and the fact that we are the butt of every joke. So I now feel the urge to rehabilitate the state, to celebrate the actually quite deep literary history that's there, to sort of smash the stereotypes that are stereotypes because they're true, but they're also really shallow, right? They don't speak to the deeper truth. And so I am a fierce defender of Florida, even though I don't love it all the time.